Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. For today's tutorial, we're making a cold shoulder balloon sleeve crop top, which is a mouthful to say, but thankfully isn't too hard to pull off. An easy breezy modern make for my hook to yours. Speaking of, if you're interested in more modern crochet makes, you are in the right place. We have hundreds of modern crochet tutorials and patterns with even more dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 355 grams of yarn. That's 795 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5 and 6 millimeter hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you prefer sweet, spicy, or sour candy. I have always had a special place in my heart for sour candy. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and the be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small. You can adjust it for your size, and I explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5 millimeter hook and start off by making a chain that starts 1 inch underneath our underarm down to where we'd like the bottom of this top to be, keeping in mind that we will have a bottom band as well. So I want a crop top, so I'm going to start off by making a chain 25. That's just about 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters. And I actually already have my underarm portion all finished up, so I'm just going to be doing a small sample size with you. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then we're all going to do a half double crochet row. Start with a yarn over. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the 3rd chain from our hook, we're going to insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. That is our first half double crochet. From here, continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one. Now that we've made our way down with our half double crochets, leaving that last chain, into that last chain, we're all going to do an increase of 2 half doubles. So yarn over. Into that last chain, we're going to insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3, then another half double into that same last chain. So insert, pull through 3. Now we're completed with our row 1. We should all have 1 more stitch than chains that we made. Our following row is going to start with an increase as well, so we're all going to chain 2 and flip. Into that first stitch, an increase of 2 back loop half double crochets. So starting with the yarn over, into that first stitch's back loop, or the loop that's furthest away from us, we're going to insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. That's our first half double into that same back loop with a second. Then from here, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. We are back. We have just completed our first 2 rows. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows, all within the back loops, until we have a portion that can reach from mid-underarm over to the corner of our underarm. Then I will meet you back right after an odd number row, so that's along the increase end, then we can get started on the increase portion of our cup. So we are back. We have just completed our underarm portion. Now I have a total of 5 rows. My width is roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters. What we're going to do from here is pretty much the same thing that we did for the underarm portion, but instead of an increase of 2 at the top, we're going to be doing an increase of 3 because we want a gradual increase up to the top of the cup. So to get that started, we're all going to chain 2 and flip. Into that first stitch, insert with 3 back loop half doubles. So there's my first, same first stitch with my second, same first stitch with my third. From here, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into the rest of our stitches. Then at the end of a row, chain 2, flip our work, and put one back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one, and I'll meet you back to do our increase together. So we've just completed our first cup row, and we have made our way up with our second cup row, leaving that last stitch. Now we're all going to do an increase of 3 back loop halves again, so yarn over, into that first stitch's back loop with 1, same stitch's back loop with 2, same stitch's back loop with a third. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we now have a portion that reaches the front of our body, so roughly where a bra strap or a tank top strap would lay, and I'll meet you back right after we complete an even number row, so along the bottom. Alright, so we are back. The increase portion of my cup is complete. Now I have a total of 14 rows. My width is roughly 4.5 inches or 11 centimeters. And the total height that I have is just about 9.5 inches or 24 centimeters. Now we're going to get started on the decrease portion of our cup. But right before we get started, 2 things. We are going to want to make sure that we're inserting our stitch marker into that last underarm row, so right where we completed our increase of 2 back loop half doubles. So I did a total of 5 of those rows. I inserted my stitch marker into that 5th row. And then also to get started on the cup, we're all going to insert our stitch marker into the 8th stitch from the top. That is going to be the 8th for every size. Then what we're going to do from here, since we should all be along the bottom, is chain 2, flip our work. Put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving 7 stitches right before a stitch marker. So I've just made my way all the way up with my back loop half doubles, leaving 7 stitches right before my stitch marker. Now what we're going to do is close off our row with 5 back loop single crochets, then close off the row with a decrease of 2 back loop singles. So into the next 5 stitches, 1 back loop single crochet into each. Here are my 5 back loop single crochets, then close off the row with a decrease of 2 back loop singles. So into that second to last back loop, pull through, last back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. Then from here, we're going to chain 1 and flip. Then start this row off with a decrease of 2 back loop singles. So again, into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. Then just like how we did for the previous row, 5 back loop single crochets. And now that we have our 5 back loop single crochets, we should have a total of 6 stitches so far for this row. Then close off the row with 1 back loop half double crochet into the rest of our stitches. Alright, so we are back. We've just made our way down with our first 2 cup decrease rows. From here, we're going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we have a portion that can reach mid-chest. Now, just to talk you guys through the following row. It's going to be worked in rows of 2 once we have our 2 rows completed. So basically, whenever we're along the bottom, we're then going to again insert our stitch marker into the 8th stitch from the top, 8th stitch for everyone, 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving 7 stitches before our stitch marker. Then 5 back loop singles, decrease of 2 back loop singles. The following row will be done the same way as our previous one, so start with a decrease of 2 back loop singles, 5 back loop singles, then 1 back loop half into every stitch, then repeat the process. I will meet you guys back right after an odd number row, so along the top once when this reaches mid-chest, and then I will meet you back. So we are back. I have just completed the decrease portion of my cup. Now I have a total of 19 rows. My width is roughly 6 inches or 15 centimeters. Now we're all going to do a middle row, then mirror everything on the other side. So the middle row is actually just going to be the following row that we would normally be doing with our decreases. So what we're going to do is chain 1, flip our work. Put 1 back loop single crochet into the first 5 stitches, then close off the row with 1 back loop half double into the rest. Then I'll meet you back at the end of the row. So we are back. Our middle row is complete. We do want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into the top of that middle row just so you know where that's at. Then now, like I said, we're going to mirror everything that we did here on the other side. So to get started on the following row, since we're all along the bottom, we're going to chain 2, flip our work. Put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, now leaving the last 6 stitches, and then I will meet you back. So we've made our way up with our back loop half doubles. We all have 6 stitches left. Start with 1 back loop single crochet into each of the next 5 stitches, then I'll meet you back when we have 1 stitch left. So we have 5 back loop single crochets into that last stitch, an increase of 2 back loop singles. So into that last back loop with 1, same back loop with a second. Now, once when we have that, we are all going to make a chain 8 because we skipped a total of 8 stitches here. Then once when we all have our chain 8, we're going to block off that last chain, do a chain 1, and flip our work. That chain 1 doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then, starting with that chain that we blocked off for the second chain from our hook, start with an increase of 2 single crochets into that chain. Once we have our increase of 2 single crochets, we're then going to be putting 5 single crochets, then our half double crochets to reach the end of the row. But once we reach the body, continue on with our back loop half double crochets so that we don't miss out on the ribbing. Alright, so now that we are back at the end of that row, we're just going to do the following row, and then we're going to repeat. So the following row, we're going to start with a chain 2, flip our work, 1 back loop half into every stitch. When we have 6 stitches left, we're going to be doing 5 back loop singles, and then close it off with an increase of 2 back loop singles. Then I'll meet you back at the end of the row. So we've made our way up with our half doubles, 5 back loop singles, and an increase of 2 back loop singles. From here, just like how we did our previous row, we're all going to chain 8 and repeat our 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of rows as our decrease portion on this side. Once we have the same amount of rows, I will meet you guys back so we can make our final chain 8, then do the decrease side of our cup. The increase portion of our cup is now complete. My total width is 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters. Now, right after that last row, we do want to make sure that we are still finishing it off with a chain 8, because remember, we started our decrease by inserting our stitch marker into the 8th stitch. Now once we have our chain 8, we're now going to do the decrease portion of the outside of our cup. So all that's going to be is a decrease of 3 half doubles at the top of our rows. So once we have our chain 8, and it is going to be a chain 8 for everyone, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. Now that chain 2 doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just our turning chain. Then we're all going to do a decrease of 3 half doubles. So starting with the yarn over, into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook, we're going to insert, yarn over, pull through. Into that following chain, we're going to insert, pull through, into that following chain, insert, pull through, for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. Then from here, yarn over and pull through all 5. Then continue on with 1 half double crochet into every chain, 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the end of the row. We have just completed our first decrease row for the cup. Now we're going to do our second. So since we're along the bottom, we're all going to chain 2, flip our work. Put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 3, and I'll meet you back. I've made my way up with my back loop half doubles, leaving the last 3 stitches. Now we're going to do a decrease of 3 back loop halves. So starting with the yarn over, into that third to last back loop, pull through, second to last, pull through, last, pull through. We should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. Now from here, yarn over, pull through all 5. Then just continue to repeat our 2 previous rows for the same amount of rows that we have for this portion of our cup. Once we have the same amount of rows, I will meet you guys back so we can finish up with our underarm. Alright, so we are back. I've just completed the decrease portion of my cup. Now we're going to finish up our front panel with our underarm. So what we're going to do is, since we should all be along the bottom, chain 2, flip our work. 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 2 stitches. So now that we've made our way up with our back loop half doubles, leaving the last 2 stitches, we're going to close off the row with a decrease of 2 back loop half. So how we're going to do that is yarn over, into that second to last back loop, pull through, then into that last back loop, pull through, should have 4 loops on our hook, so yarn over, pull through all 4. Now since this is our first underarm row, we do want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into the top end of this row to match the other stitch marker on the other side. Then just to get started on the following row together, chain 2 and flip. Then start this row off with a decrease as well. So yarn over, into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through. Yarn over, pull through 4, and continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. From here, continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of rows as our underarm portion that we started off with. Once we have the same amount of rows, do a chain up a 1 and cut, then I will meet you back. So we are back. The entirety of our front panel is complete. I have a total width of just about 11.5 inches or 29 centimeters, and I did do a chain up 1 and cut right after my last row. Now from here, we're going to get started on the back panel, but it is going to be done pretty much the same as the front panel. But when it comes to doing the middle, we aren't going to do any increases or decreases. Mine's actually already all completed, so I'm just going to talk you guys through it. So when it comes to doing our back panel, we're all going to start by making a chain for the same amount of chains that we did when we got started on the front panel's underarm, then do the same underarm rows. Then once we have the same underarm rows, all we're going to do is just do back loop half double crochet rows with no increases and no decreases, working our way all the way across for the same amount of rows that we have from our first cup increase row all the way across to our last cup decrease row. So no increases and no decreases. Then close off our underarm portion the same way that we just did together. We do still want to make sure that we're inserting our stitch markers into the last and into the first underarm rows just so that they match within both the front and the back panel. Then once we have that completed, do a chain up one and cut, then I will meet you back. So we are back. Now that both our front and the back panel are completed, now we're going to seam everything up. So now we're just going to place the front panel on top of the back panel and insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back. We're going to pull through, do a chain up of one to secure. Then we're going to do a single crochet seam. So finding that first stitch into the front panel, insert, first stitch into the back panel, insert, and single crochet. Again, next stitch into the front, next stitch into the back, and single, and continue this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of one and cut and repeat on the other side. So now that everything is all seamed up, we're ready to do the prep row for our sleeve. So what we're going to want to do is make sure that our work is flipped right side out, meaning the seams that we just did are now along the inside. Then into one of our stitch marker stitches that framed our armholes, we're going to insert our hook in through there and working down towards the seam and back up towards our other stitch marker side row, we're going to be doing a single crochet row. So all we're going to do is put 2 single crochet into every side row until we're worked into our following stitch marker side row. So I've inserted my hook into my stitch marker side row. I'm going to pull through and do a chain up of one to secure. Now I'm going to take my stitch marker out because I don't need it anymore. And into that same side row, insert with 2 single crochets. So insert into that top loop with 2 singles. There's one. Into that same top loop, there's a second. Let's do this again. This is my following side row. I'm going to find that top loop, insert with 1. Same side row, insert with a second. We're going to continue doing this until we're worked into our last side row. That's right before our side seam. We've just done our single crochet row, working into the last side row that we have right before our side seam. What we're going to do from here is chain 1 over that seam, making sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into that chain space. Then into that next side row on the other side of our side seam, 2 single crochet into every side row again until we're worked into our stitch marker side row. Then do a chain up one and cut, and I'll meet you back. So now that our single crochet row is complete, we did do a chain up one and cut. Now we're ready to get started on the length of our sleeve. So first things first, still making sure that our work is flipped right side out, we're going to be inserting our 6mm hook into that chain space that we have that's in the middle of our prep row. Then start by making a chain the length that we'd like for our sleeve to be. So you can make this as long or as short as you'd like. I'd like for mine to be a long sleeve, so I'm going to start by making a chain 70, and that's 17 inches or 43 centimeters. Now that we have our chain, we're going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then starting with the yarn over, into that chain that we blocked off with a third chain from our hook, insert with a half double crochet. Then from here, continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one. We've made our way down with our first half double crochet row, leaving that last chain. Now all we're going to do is an increase of 2 half double crochet all into that last chain. So there's my first, there's my second, and now we're going to connect it into the base. So just finding that next available stitch into the base, this is mine right here. I'm going to insert, yarn over, and pull through everything with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just there to connect. We do need to work our way up to the following row, so find that next available stitch into the base, slip stitch into there, still doesn't count as a stitch, flip our work, and start this row off with an increase of 2 back loop halves as well. So yarn over, into the last stitch from our previous row, not working into any of those slip stitches into the base, insert with an increase of 2 back loop halves, so there's 1, there's 2, then from here continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, put one back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one, and I will meet you back. So we are back and we made our way all the way down and we have completed our row 3. Into that last available stitch, we made sure to do our increase of 2 back loop half double crochets. Now we're just going to connect it into the base together. So just finding that next available stitch, just like our previous row, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. Still does not count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. Also doesn't count as a stitch. Flip our work, then repeat our 2 previous rows until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. Once we're worked into our last available stitch, I will meet you guys back to get started on the width of our sleeve. So we are back. We've made our way all the way up until we're worked into our last available stitch into that prep row that we did. We all should have ended along the outer edge. Now what we're all going to do from here is a really quick prep row just to know how many rows we need to do working across the top of our arm. So what we're going to do is first start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then inserting our 5mm hook into the top corner stitch of our prep row. We're all going to make an odd number chain that can wrap around our arm from this top corner stitch of our prep row, around our arm to the top corner stitch of our other prep row, which will be the stitch that our last row is worked out of. So for those of you that have my numbers, I went ahead and already measured out my chain. My chain is a total of 25, and this width is just about 5 inches or 13 centimeters, and it can wrap around my arm and reach this top corner stitch of my prep row. Now when we are making this chain, we want to make sure that this tail end, or our stitch marker right where our underarm is still staying roughly 1 inch beneath our underarm because we don't want this to become too wide or too tight. But once we have that chain, making sure that everything fits nice and comfortably, we're then going to continue on with our back loop half double crochet rows, but now working off of the piece for the same amount of rows as chains that we made. So we can take apart this prep chain, because we don't need it anymore, is just to see how many rows we're going to do. Then switching back out to our 6mm hook, since we should all be along the outer edge, chain 2, flip our work, 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. When we're worked into that last stitch, chain 2, flip our work, and then work your way back down with a half double crochet row within the back loops. So this width portion that is going to reach from this corner stitch around our arm to this corner stitch won't have any increases or decreases. Continue on with that, doing the same amount of rows as chains that we just made. Once we have the same amount of rows, we should all end along the base, so I'll meet you back to show you how we're going to connect it into the base. So we are back. I have just made my way all the way across with the amount of rows that I needed for the width of my sleeve, and now we're going to connect it to the other side of our prep row. So just as a refresher, I did a total of 25 rows. We all should have ended along the top. Now we're going to slip stitch it into that next available stitch into the prep row. So what we're going to do is make sure the work is still flipped right side out, right side up. We're going to still be using our 6mm hook, then we're going to slip stitch it into the top corner stitch of our prep row, and we're going to slip stitch it into there, so the same way that we would be working our way up to the following row as if we were working into the single crochets. So from here, yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. That's to connect. Then just for this row, we're going to flip our work and start our row off with a decrease of 2 back loop halves. So working our way down our previous row, we're all going to yarn over into that first stitch, making sure we're not working into that slip stitch into the base. We're going to insert, pull through, next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4. Then from here, continue with 1 back loop half into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, put 1 back loop half into every stitch again, leaving the last 2 stitches, then I'll meet you back. So we're just about to complete our second decrease row. We've made our way all the way down towards the base, leaving the last 2 stitches. Now we're going to close off the row with a decrease of 2 back loop halves. So starting with the yarn over, insert your hook into that second to last back loop, pull through into that next stitch's back loop, which should be the last, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4, and now we're going to slip stitch it into the base the same way that we've been doing this entire time. So just into that next available stitch, insert with a slip stitch to connect this row. Then since we're here, just to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch. None of those slip stitches into the base actually count as a stitch. Flip our work, then repeat our 2 previous rows till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, I'll meet you guys back so we can seam it all together. So we are back. We have worked into the rest of our stitches till we didn't have any more left, and now we're going to seam it together. Now, as you guys can see, I went ahead and have already seamed mine together. It is going to be the same single crochet seam that we did for the sides. So just to talk you guys through it, making sure that our work is flipped wrong side out so that all of our seams are going to be along the inside. We're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then just do our same single crochet seam all the way down. Now we should be working our way down towards the edge of the sleeve for our seam. So once we make our way all the way down, we're going to switch out to our 5mm hook. Then we can continuously work with our working yarn, starting with our cuff. So once when we are done with our seam, like I said, we're going to switch out to our 5mm hook, and we're going to do a single crochet row along the edge of our sleeve. We're simply going to be putting one single crochet into every side row. So what we're going to do from here is chain one and put one single crochet into every side row, starting with the first one right here. So what we're going to do is chain one. We're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out now, meaning the seam is now along the inside. Then we're going to be putting one single crochet into every side row. So finding our first side row, this is mine right here, I'm going to insert my hook with a single crochet. Now this is my following side row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with another. And that's it. We're going to continue on with one single crochet into every side row, making our way all the way around. Once we've made our way all the way around, slip stitch into that chain space, then I will meet you back. So now that our single crochet row is complete and we have slip stitched into that chain space, the next we're going to do is make a chain the length that we'd like for our cuff to be. I'd like for my cuff to be just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I went ahead and made a chain 10. Then we're going to do a slip stitch cuff. Start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're all going to insert with a slip stitch. So insert, pull through both loops. Again, into that next chain, yarn over, pull through both, and continue with one slip stitch into every chain. We do want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly after every stitch, otherwise the following row will be a little too tight to work into. Now that we've put one slip stitch into every chain, we're going to connect it into the base. So just finding that next available stitch into the base, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. Doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect, so pretty much the same way that we were connecting it into the body for the sleeve. Then to work our way up to the next row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. Then we're going to do a back loop slip stitch row, so flip your work. Finding that last stitch from our previous row, we're going to insert with a back loop slip stitch. We do want to make sure they're not working into any of those slip stitches into the base, so into that first stitch, insert into that back loop, yarn over, gently pull through everything, and that's it. Continue with one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch again, and I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. So we are back. We have just completed our third row, and now we're going to connect it into the base. So just like the previous row, insert your hook into that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, flip our work and put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch again, and from here just continue to repeat our 2 previous rows without any increases or decreases, making our way all the way around. Then I'll meet you back when we don't have any more stitches left to work into, so we can seam everything together. So we are back. We've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam it together, and this seam is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam. So it's going to be done a little bit differently than all of our other seams so far. So we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out so that the seam can look like another back loop slip stitch row. Then we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then we're going to yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. Then finding that first stitch into the front panel, insert only into that front loop. First stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop. Then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. That's it. Let's do this once more. Into that next stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop, pull all the way through. That's it. We're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way down. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain up 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. So now that both of our sleeves are completed, we're now going to get started on our bottom band. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Inserting our 5mm hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom of our piece, we're going to do a single crochet row. All we're going to do is alternate between 1 to 2 single crochet into every side row. So this is my first side row. I'm going to insert, starting with 1 single crochet. Into my following side row, insert with 2. So there is 1, there is 2. Again, this is my next side row, insert with just 1. My next side row, insert with 2, and we're going to continue this, making our way all the way around, then slip stitch into that chain space. Just as a really quick tip, the single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch, so once when it's completed, try your piece on. If it's a little bit too tight, reduce some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, reduce some stitches with a tighter grip. So now that we've made our way all the way around with our single crochet row, we're now going to get started on our bottom band. So from where we're at, we're all going to start by making a chain the length that we like for the bottom band to be. Now I'd like for mine to be just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, just like my cuff, so I'm going to start by making a chain 10. Once we have our chain 10, we're then going to do a double crochet row. So start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 3. That chain 3 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then we're going to put 1 double crochet into every chain. Starting with a yarn over into that chain that we blocked off, or the 4th chain from our hook, we're going to insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. From here, continue with 1 double crochet into every chain. So now that we've put 1 double crochet into every chain, we're now going to connect it into the base. So connecting it into the base is going to be done a little bit differently than the cuff. So what we're going to do is count up the next 2 available stitches. There's 1, there's 2. Into that second stitch, insert with a slip stitch to connect. Now that slip stitch into the base doesn't actually count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, which is going to be another double crochet row, we're going to slip stitch up the next 2 available stitches. So into that next stitch with a slip stitch, then into that next stitch with another slip stitch. Now none of those slip stitches into the base actually count as a stitch. Flip our work. And now we're going to put 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch. So starting with the yarn over, into the last stitch from our previous row, insert with a back loop double crochet. And that's it. From here, continue with 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 3, flip our work, put 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch again, and I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. So we are back. We're now at the end of our row 3. Now, since we're here, just to connect it into the base together once more, it will be done the same way as our previous row. So count up the next 2 available stitches into the base, insert with a slip stitch, doesn't count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch up the following 2 stitches into the base. There's 1, there's the second. None of those slip stitches into the base count as a stitch. Flip our work and put 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch. From here, continue to repeat our 2 previous rows, making our way all the way around. Well, we don't have any more stitches left to work into. I'll meet you back so we can seam everything together. So we are back. We have just completed making our way all the way around with our bottom band. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam it together, and I've actually already done this seam because it is going to be the same seam as our sleeve and for the sides. So making sure the work is flipped wrong side out, we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, then do our same single crochet seam till we don't have any more stitches left. When we don't, do a chain up a 1 and cut. So we are back. We're ready to get started on the strap. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out. Then we're going to insert our stitch marker into the middle row that we have within the back panel. Now just counting the back panel width, not the underarm portion, because that's mainly all that we see right here, I inserted my stitch marker into my 15th row. We should all have just 1 side row. Then what we're going to do from here is from the top corner point of the cup, we're going to single crochet all the way around our sleeve and all the way back up to this top corner point. So we're all going to start by inserting our 5mm hook into the top corner stitch of our cup. Then just working into the side of our cup, we're going to be putting 2 single crochet into every side row. So I'm going to pull my working yarn through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Into my first side row, I'm going to find that top loop and insert, starting with 2 single crochets. So there is 1. Into that same top loop, there's 2. Into my following side row, I'm going to insert my hook in through there with 1. Into that same top loop with 2, and continue doing this, making our way all the way down until we reach our first sleeve row. So now that we've made our way down with our single crochets, working our way across our sleeve, we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side row. So just working into the top of our sleeve, we're going to find that first side row. This is mine right here. I'm going to reach over into that side row and insert with just 1 single crochet. Then into my following, which is this one, find that top loop and insert with 1, and continue with 1 single crochet into every side row, making our way across the top of our sleeve. So now that we've put one single crochet into every side row across the top of our sleeve, into the top of the back panel until we reach our stitch marker, we're now going to be alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. So finding my first available side row, which is this one right here, I'm going to reach my hook all the way over to there, start with just one single crochet, into my next side row, which is this one right here, insert with 2. So there's 1, there's 2. Again, next side row, there is 1, next side row, insert with 2, so there's 1, there's 2, and I'll meet you back until we're worked into the side row that we have right before our middle side row. So we've made our way down with our single crochets, and we're now worked into our side row that's right before our middle row. What we're going to do is take that stitch marker out for now, single crochet into that following side row, just one, which should be the same sequence that we've been doing, and insert a stitch marker into there. This is going to be our middle stitch, and just to make sure, not counting that middle stitch, so counting from this stitch all the way until we started this single crochet row, we should have an even number of stitches. Then from here, we're going to mirror everything we did here on the other side. So just to talk you guys through it, working into the tops of our back, alternate between 1 to 2 single crochet into every side row. The following side row will start with 2 single crochet. Into the top of the sleeve, 1 single crochet into every side row. Then working our way up our cup, 2 single crochet into every side row until we reach the top corner point. Once we do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you back. So now that our single crochet row is complete, we're now going to get started on the top band. So it's going to be done in 2 parts, but done exactly the same. We're going to start by inserting our hook into our stitch marker stitch within the back panel, making sure that everything is flipped right side out, right side up. We're then going to do the same back loop double crochet rows that we did for the bottom band. So I'm just going to talk you guys through it. We're going to start by making a chain the height that we'd like for the band / strap to be, because this will be the width of the strap as well. I'd like for mine to be just about 1 inch. So I'm going to start by making a chain 4. Then do our back loop double crochet rows, working our way all the way across over our sleeve until we reach this top corner stitch, and then I'll meet you back. Okay, so we are back. We have made our way all the way up with our back loop double crochet rows, working into our last available stitch. Now from here, we're going to continue on with our strap, doing more back loop double crochet rows. So once we're worked into our last single crochet, all we're going to do, doesn't matter if we end along the outer edge or the base, we're going to chain 3, flip our work, 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch, chain 3, flip our work, 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch again. Then from here, we're just going to continue on with our back loop double crochet rows with no increases, no decreases, until we have a portion that can reach up and over our shoulder to the stitch markers that we have within the back, and that's going to be where we seam it. Now, together, we don't have our stitch markers into there, but let's talk you guys through that. So the placement of the stitch markers are going to be completely up to you. You guys can have it closer to the middle or closer to the outer edge. That's up to you. I just wanted mine to be straight up and down, not too fussy. So all I did was insert my stitch markers in between the 4th and 5th side row. Then once we have that, we're just going to seam it together. But just to let you guys know, just counting the strap length rows, I have a total of 17 rows. That length is just about 7 inches or 18 centimeters. Now what we're going to do from here is fold our strap down, then seam it from stitch marker to stitch marker. So we're all going to start by making sure that our seam will be along the inside so that when our piece is worn, you won't be able to see it. What we're going to do is then insert our hook into the corner stitch of the strap and into the stitch marker stitch, and from here we're just going to do a single crochet seam. So yarn over, pull through, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. And just working our way across, we may or may not work into that following stitch marker stitch, but we just need to work in that direction so that our strap isn't twisted. And all we're going to do is insert our hook into that first stitch, into the strap, first side row within the top of the band. It could be this side row right here. Insert with a single crochet, and that's it. We're just going to continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. Once we have this strap completed, we're going to repeat everything we did here on the other side, but just so that we don't have to seam the straps together, once we're completed, what we're going to do is insert our hook into the top corner stitch of the chain that we made when we got started on this side, then repeat working in the opposite direction. Once we have that completed and we have seamed it to the strap, the same way that we just did, I will meet you guys back. Alright, so we are back. We have just completed both of our straps and now we are nearly done. We're just going to single crochet along our neckline to clean everything up. So since you guys can tell, I have already got my single crochet completed. All we're going to do is insert our 5mm hook into the stitch that we have that's nearest to the strap, making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then simply put 1 single crochet into every stitch, 1 single crochet into every side row, and just make our way down and all the way back up. Then slip stitch into the base and do a chain up of 1 and cut. Once we have that completed, we are all done. Then the last thing we have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it, y'all. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye!